Hello everyone, this is David, Product Manager for Chrome Enterprise. And today I'd like to talk to you about identity options for Chrome OS. We'll first go over the Chrome OS identity model, talk to you a little bit about the alternative identity options, what those mean to you, and how you should position these when you're talking to customers. In addition to Google Identity, Chrome OS also supports other identity options, and there are 3 of them. You can support native Microsoft Active Directory integration, you can support identity federation via SAML SSO, and you can also support a mode with no identity at all, a mode we call public sessions. And of course you can try all these out and more if you want with our new integrated trial option. This allows you to get a domain and trial license very easily without any need for any sort of DNS verification or creating your own domain. If we start with Active Directory integration for Chrome OS, this basically allows you to do 3 very important things. It allows you to domain join a Chromebook. This creates a record for the Chrome device as a device in Active Directory. It also allows you to enable your users to authenticate with their native Active Directory credentials into a Chrome device. And on top of both of these identities, the device and the user identity, you can now also deploy group policy objects. So this allows you to manage both on the device level and on the user level. Using those AD objects, you can create group policy objects and push them down to your devices and down to your users. This is very interesting because now your customers do not need to sync their identity systems to the cloud anymore, and they can use the ones they have on-premise directly. And to visualize this a little bit, what happens is in the first step, you have to activate your Chrome Enterprise license. This is where you enroll a Chrome device with the Google Management Server. From there on, it's actually the device is talking directly to the Active Directory server. And when you domain join it, it creates a device identity for that Chrome device with Active Directory. And when the user authenticates, they use their native Active Directory credentials to authenticate to that device. And the combination of these 2 things allows you also to push group policy objects, as mentioned, and those group policy objects also reside on the Active Directory server. The second option you can use for identity is federation. Federation is a very interesting concept because it allows you to create a hybrid cloud model where you have certain on-premise services using your native identity server, but then you also have a federated authentication where you can use cloud services like Salesforce and G Suite, and those can authenticate via a federated endpoint. And to visualize this in a nicer way, what you see here in the schematic is you have your users and your devices. You have on one end your identity provider, and on the other end all your SaaS applications. So now when users, for example, want to access Salesforce, they just go to Salesforce, and then Salesforce says, well, I don't have your identity, so I'm going to ask you to go prove your identity to me, and then it redirects you to your actual identity provider. And then you log in with your identity provider, and then your identity provider provides an assertion to Salesforce or to Workday or to Amazon Web Services that user actually has authenticated. And in effect, it's a very interesting protocol because it allows you to offload entirely the step of user authentication back to the identity provider and allows you to integrate seamlessly with SaaS applications. Now, we took that concept and integrated with Chrome device. In that universe, the Chrome device itself is acting as a federated endpoint, and it asks the user to authenticate with their identity provider. Once the user has authenticated with the identity provider, the Chrome device uses that assertion to create a user profile, very much like the user profile that has been created if the user had used their Google credentials or their native Active Directory credentials. And this is a very nice way to be able to use the Chrome device and be able to authenticate to the Chrome device using a federated identity endpoint. The third option is not to have any identity at all. And there are many cases where that is very highly desirable. If you look at spaces which are highly shared and they have very simple use cases that do not require sign-in, you want to have multiple users on the device and have the data of each user just completely be wiped after sign-out. And you also want to manage those sessions. And this is very useful in those cases to have just a mode that requires no identity and no sign-in at all. And with public sessions on Chrome OS, that is also possible. And is made possible to the admin via the Cloud Management Console. So what does this exactly mean for you? You need to know which of these modes is actually most convenient for your customers. But now you can actually, first of all, go after more customers because you're not restricted to the customers that use Google Identity. You can also go after customers who are also using Active Directory identity as their solution. You can also provide integration and deployment services depending on what use cases your customers want to access. And of course, you can help your existing customers improve their security and identity posture by doing a deeper analysis and trying to figure out which of these three options is actually the best one for them. And if you look at it more broadly, when you talk to these customers, trying to understand what exactly they might need and which option fits best for them, the best framework to think about it is, if you think there are a customer that would lean much more to use an on-premise system and does not want to make a transition to the cloud, then they're much better fit for the native Microsoft Active Directory integration. As well as if your customer is deploying Chrome in a very partial way, so for example, they're using tens or just hundreds of devices instead of thousands or tens of thousands, it might actually be much easier for them as well to not do any identity transition and just use their existing identity system. For the federation case, it's a much better fit for customers who have actually moved to the cloud and are used to the concept of the cloud. And in that case, they will have to sync their identity systems to the Google Cloud so that Google is aware of those usernames. And then they can use federation to log into the Chrome devices as described above. And in the third case, where you don't use any identity at all, this is a very good fit for cases where you have one-time login, very simple use cases. Its identity is even perhaps not required at all, or the space is very highly shared. So you want people to be able to cycle over devices very quickly without having to log in at all. And now we're going to move into the demos. I'd like to show you a demo of each and every single identity option on Chrome OS. So let's start with native Active Directory authentication. Here we see a user landing on the Chrome OS sign-in screen. You will see that the device is actually joined to the domain. And the domain is there for the user to actually type their credentials on. Once the user types their credentials, they are authenticating directly with Active Directory, and now they have created a user profile there. And just to showcase that all of this is actually managed, if we go to the Chrome policy page to actually see which policies have been applied, if I look now at the page, you'll see multiple policies have been applied, and with the words local server mentioned next to it. This means that those are group policy objects coming from the Active Directory server, and they have been applied to the Chromebook itself. We'd like now to show you the second option for doing identity on Chrome OS, which is the federated identity. This is also using Active Directory, but it's going through the federated endpoint, which is ADFS. As you can see here, the user is actually signing in via their Google account. And once they actually hit the Google server is configured to redirect them to their Active Directory Federation services. So this next screen here is the ADFS screen, and now the user is typing their credentials to the Active Directory server. And now once they log into Active Directory, it redirects them back to Chrome, which establishes their user profile. And this is again a fully managed user session. And if we go again to the Chrome policy tab, then we can actually see all the policies that have been applied to this user. And those policies are actually coming from the remote server, from the cloud, in comparison to the previous ones that actually came from the local Active Directory on-premise server. The third option we also wanted to demo for you are public sessions, which involve no identity integration at all. Here we see the public session pod, so users come in, and with just one click, they can actually start their session. And as you can see here, the user clicks, and then they are taken directly to their session. Administrators can have this optional terms of service, or they can just not have it, depends on what they want. Now the user is in public session, they can exit it at any point in time by clicking on the red button at the bottom right corner. They can set also duration for the session. In this case, it's actually the session is set to expire and the user will be logged out. And of course, these sessions are also managed. So administrators can push any policies they want onto those users, very similar to how they would do it with regular user sessions. Except in this case, the users are not authenticated and they could have started the session immediately just with one click. Thank you very much for watching this presentation. Always remember, Chrome OS has a very diverse set of identity options that are fit for any use cases that your customers might want to deploy. Please visit our help centers for many more information about all of this.